I was 34 years old, with everything I could ever want. A beautiful pregnant wife, a successful career as a senior marketing executive, and a supportive family that always had my back. Or so I thought. I never imagined my vindictive coworker Marcus would fabricate evidence of an affair that would convince my entire family to turn against me overnight. In one devastating week, I lost my wife, my home, my job, and my dignity. Before I continue this painful story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you appreciate real stories of betrayal and redemption, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to hear how this ends. Growing up in a traditional Mexican-American family in Arizona taught me one thing above all else: family loyalty was sacred. My parents instilled in us that blood ties were unbreakable and family always came first. This made what happened all the more devastating. I met Jessica during our junior year at Arizona State University. She was blonde, ambitious, and from a wealthy family. I was immediately captivated by her confidence and drive. We dated for 3 years before I proposed, and our wedding 4 years ago was an elaborate affair. Her parents spared no expense inviting over 300 guests to the country club where they were members. After the wedding, we bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house in an upscale Phoenix neighborhood. It was more than we needed at the time, but we talked about filling it with children. When Jessica told me she was pregnant 5 months ago, I felt like my life was complete. Her parents hosted a lavish gender reveal party where we discovered we would have a little girl. My parents wept with joy at the prospect of their first grandchild. My career was thriving too. I had worked my way up at Wellington Partners, one of the most prestigious marketing firms in Phoenix, to become a senior account executive. My client portfolio was impressive, and I consistently brought in significant revenue for the company. My younger brother, Thomas, had always lived somewhat in my shadow. While I excelled academically and professionally, Thomas struggled to find his path. He bounced between jobs and relationships, never quite settling down. Despite this, we remained close, and I always tried to help him when I could. I never saw the resentment building beneath the surface. Everything changed when Marcus joined our team at Wellington. From day one, there was something off about him. He came from a privileged background and had an entitled attitude that rubbed many of us the wrong way. While he talked a big game, his performance rarely matched his promises. It particularly bothered him that I, the son of immigrants, outperformed him consistently. At first, the signs of his jealousy were subtle. He would take credit for my ideas in meetings or offer backhanded compliments about my work. I brushed it off as simple competitiveness and focused on my own performance. The real trouble began when I landed the Zimmerman account, a major national retailer that Marcus had been targeting. My pitch won them over, and the success earned me a promotion to team lead with a substantial raise. Marcus was passed over completely. While my colleagues congratulated me, I noticed Marcus, watching from the corner, a cold calculation in his eyes. The following month, I traveled to Chicago for 3 days to work closely with another client, Sophia Chen, the marketing director for a tech company. The project was intense, requiring long days and evening strategy sessions. Sophia was professional, brilliant, and happily married with 3 kids whose photos covered her desk. We worked well together, and the project was a success. I was completely oblivious to the fact that Marcus was keeping tabs on my interactions with Sophia, collecting small moments he could later distort into something sinister. The last happy memory I have was a family dinner the Sunday after I returned from Chicago. Jessica was radiant at 5 months pregnant, though she mentioned having some concerning symptoms that required more rest. My parents and hers were there along with Thomas. We ate my mother's famous chile rellenos and talked excitedly about baby names and nursery designs. With Jessica needing more rest, I took on extra projects at work to prepare for the extended paternity leave I planned to take when the baby arrived. This meant late nights at the office and weekend work, Thomas generously offered to keep Jessica company when I was busy bringing her groceries and helping with house chores. I was grateful for his support, never suspecting his ulterior motives. I had no idea that while I was working overtime to prepare for fatherhood, Marcus was meticulously building a case against me. He was surprisingly tech-savvy for someone who struggled with basic marketing analytics. He doctored hotel receipts from the Chicago trip to make it appear that Sophia and I had shared a room when, in reality, we stayed on different floors. He manipulated photos from our business dinners, cropping out other colleagues to make our interactions seem intimate. His most devastating creation was a set of fake text messages using a spoofing app. The conversations he fabricated contained explicit content and plans for future rendezvous. The messages were vulgar and completely out of character for me, but they looked authentic to anyone who did not know better. Once his evidence was compiled, Marcus did not come to me as a concerned colleague might. Instead, he went directly to Jessica. He played the role of reluctant messenger, claiming he felt morally obligated to tell her about her husband's infidelity, especially with a baby on the way. Jessica never called me to ask for my side of the story. She did not question the authenticity of the evidence or wonder why Marcus would involve himself in our marriage. Instead, she immediately believed everything Marcus told her. Later, I would learn that her own father had repeatedly cheated on her mother, creating a deep-seated fear of betrayal that Marcus expertly exploited. 3 days after Marcus spoke with Jessica, I received a text from her asking me to come to her parents' house for a family dinner. I was excited, thinking it was another baby celebration. I even stopped to buy flowers on the way. When I arrived, I immediately sensed something was wrong. Cars lined the driveway, including my parents' sedan and Thomas's pickup truck. Inside, everyone sat in the living room, with grave expressions. Jessica was crying, comforted by my brother, whose arm was around her shoulders. Before I could ask what was happening, Jessica's father thrust a folder into my hands. "Explain this," he demanded. Inside were printouts of all Marcus's fabricated evidence. My blood ran cold as I flipped through photos and text messages of things that had never happened. "This is not what it looks like," I said, my mind racing to understand how these false documents came to exist. "These are fake. I never did any of this." "Marcus warned us you would deny it," Jessica spat. "He said, you have been sleeping with clients for years. That woman from Chicago is just the latest." I tried to explain the manipulation, but no one wanted to hear it. Jessica's father, a large man with a fierce temper, stood up. "My daughter will not be humiliated by a cheater," he growled before landing the first blow to my jaw. What followed was a nightmare I still revisit in therapy. My own father, believing I had dishonored our family, joined in the assault. 2 of my uncles held me down as fists pounded my ribs and face. I did not fight back, partly from shock, and partly because I could not bring myself to strike my own family. Thomas stood by the doorway, not participating in the violence, but making no move to stop it. His eyes met mine briefly, and I saw something that chills me even now: satisfaction. Blood pouring from my nose and split lip, I was dragged to the door and literally thrown onto the front lawn. My wallet and car keys were tossed after me. "You are no son of mine," my father declared before slamming the door. Dazed and bleeding, I drove to our house, only to find the locks changed. Garbage bags containing some of my clothes and personal items were piled on the porch with a note from Jessica's lawyer, warning me not to enter the property. I slept in my car that night, using fast food napkins to clean my bloodied face, trying to comprehend how my entire life had imploded in a single evening. The next morning, I went to work hoping to at least maintain my professional life. I was met in the lobby by security guards who escorted me out. Marcus had gone to HR with the same fabricated evidence, claiming I was having inappropriate relationships with clients that jeopardized company contracts. I was terminated immediately. When I tried to use my credit cards to check into a hotel, they were declined. Jessica had already emptied our joint accounts and canceled our shared cards. With the cash in my wallet, I managed to pay for 3 nights at a dingy motel on the outskirts of Phoenix. I called friends and extended family desperate for help, but Marcus had been busy. Somehow, he had spread the story far and wide. People I had known for years either did not pick up or told me they did not want to get involved. The final blow came 5 days after the assault. My cousin sent me a photo taken at an upscale restaurant downtown. It showed Jessica and Thomas seated together at a romantic table, his hand covering hers intimately. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I could barely process it. My brother had not only stood by while I was beaten and disowned, but had been waiting to take my place in Jessica's life. In 1 week, I had lost my wife, my unborn child, my home, my career, my family, and my reputation. I had exactly $87 to my name and nowhere to go. After a week of sleeping in my car in a Walmart parking lot, I realized I needed to find work immediately. With no references and a sudden termination, interviews were difficult to secure. When I did get them, they mysteriously fell through after the reference check stage. I later learned that Marcus had been contacting potential employers, continuing his campaign to destroy my life. Desperate for cash, I sold my wedding ring at a pawn shop for a fraction of its value. The money allowed me to pay for a week at a slightly better motel with a kitchenette where I could at least cook ramen noodles instead of relying on fast food. 2 weeks after being disowned, I visited a legal aid clinic seeking advice on the divorce I knew was coming. That is where I met Sarah, a paralegal with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She initially treated me with the same skepticism as everyone else when I explained my situation. "Let me guess. You have been falsely accused," she said, not bothering to hide her disbelief. "Yes," I replied simply, "and I can prove it." I showed her the metadata on some of Marcus's doctored photos, pointing out inconsistencies in the timestamps and editing markers. Something in my detailed explanation must have convinced her because her demeanor softened slightly. "This is going to be a tough case," she warned. "False accusations have momentum, especially when family is involved." What I did not know then was that Sarah had her own complicated history with Jessica. They were sisters who had not spoken in years due to a family dispute over their grandfather's will. Sarah had been cut off from the family after challenging what she saw as Jessica's manipulation of the elderly man before his death. Over the following weeks, as Sarah helped me prepare for the divorce proceedings, she gradually became convinced of my innocence. She helped me find temporary work through agencies that did not require extensive background checks and introduced me to a friend who had a spare room for rent. Despite Sarah's help, the divorce was devastating. Jessica's family hired aggressive attorneys who painted me as emotionally abusive and potentially violent. They used photos of my injuries from the assault to suggest I had been in a bar fight, further proving my supposedly unstable nature. Jessica claimed to fear for her safety and that of our unborn child. When my daughter Lily was born 2 months later, I was not allowed in the hospital. I sent flowers that were returned. The court granted Jessica a restraining order based on fabricated concerns, and I was denied even supervised visitation rights. With nothing left for me in Phoenix, I accepted Sarah's suggestion to relocate to Colorado, where she had attended law school and had connections. Starting over in Denver was the hardest thing I had ever done. I found an entry-level position at a small software company answering customer service calls. The pay was barely enough to afford a studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, but it was a start. Determined to rebuild my life, I enrolled in night classes to learn programming. The technical skills came naturally to me, and I found comfort in the logical world of code where things either worked or did not. There were no false accusations or betrayals, just problems to solve. I made a few cautious friendships, but never mentioned my past. The pain was still too raw, the shame too deep. Sarah remained my only confidant, visiting every few months to help with various legal matters, as Jessica continued to block all attempts at contacting my daughter. Every year on Lily's birthday, I would send a gift and card to my parents' address, hoping they might reach her. Every year they were returned unopened. I kept them all in a special box, a collection of lost moments with the daughter I had never met. 3 years into my new life, I had achieved small victories: a promotion at work, a slightly better apartment, a used car that mostly ran without issues. Sarah had become my closest friend, though I kept emotional distance from everyone as a form of self-protection. On one of her visits 4 years after the destruction of my former life, Sarah confessed she had developed feelings for me. I was hesitant, damaged in ways that made intimacy terrifying. But Sarah had seen me at my absolute lowest and still believed in me. Slowly, cautiously, we began dating long distance. Over the next several years, Sarah moved to Denver, and we built a life together. My programming skills had advanced significantly, and together, we founded a small software development company. We created an inventory management app that gained traction with small businesses, providing financial security I never thought I would have again. I continued legal attempts to establish contact with my daughter, but Jessica's family's wealth and influence created constant roadblocks. The pain of this separation drove me to therapy, where I slowly processed the trauma of my family's betrayal and began the long journey towards self-forgiveness. With Sarah's love and support, I built a chosen family of loyal friends who knew my full story and stood by me. After 7 years together, Sarah and I married in a small, intimate ceremony in the mountains. We discussed having children, but the pain of losing Lily was still too great. Instead, we focused on building our business and creating a stable, loving home. Through it all, the question of what happened to Lily haunted me. I kept a private social media account just to glimpse the rare public photos Jessica posted of her. I watched from afar as my daughter grew, looking for traces of myself in her features. 16 years passed since that devastating night when my family turned on me. Sarah and I had built a successful life in Denver, our software company now employing over 30 people. We had a beautiful home in the mountains, financial security, and a strong network of friends who had become our true family. I had mostly made peace with my past, though the hole left by my daughter's absence never fully healed. I had not spoken to my parents, Thomas or Jessica, in all those years. Through distant connections, I knew that Thomas and Jessica had married shortly after our divorce and raised Lily together. The thought still burned, but the pain had dulled with time. Everything changed when I attended a technology conference in Seattle. I was presenting our company's latest software when I noticed a teenage girl in the audience asking particularly insightful questions. Something about her struck me as familiar, her mannerisms, and the way she tilted her head when listening. After the presentation, she approached me to ask about internship opportunities. When she introduced herself as Lily Ramirez, my brother's surname, I nearly collapsed. Standing before me was my 16-year-old daughter, with my mother's eyes and my own dimpled smile. I maintained my composure somehow, discussing technology and her interest in programming. I did not reveal who I was afraid of, overwhelming her, or violating the legal agreements still technically in place. But as we talked, I could see her studying my face with growing curiosity. "You seem really familiar," she said. "Have we met before?" I shook my head, my throat tight with emotion. "I do not think so. I would remember." We exchanged business cards, and I spent that night in my hotel room, looking at her social media accounts, seeing 16 years of a life I should have been part of. There were photos with Thomas and Jessica's school events, vacations. But I also noticed recent posts hinting at family tensions and questions about identity. 3 weeks later, I received an email from Lily that changed everything. "I know who you are," she wrote. "I found old photos and did some research. You are my biological father. I have questions if you are willing to answer them." With trembling hands, I replied that I would answer anything she wanted to know. We began cautious video chats, building a relationship one conversation at a time. She revealed that things at home were difficult. Thomas and Jessica's marriage was failing with constant arguments and tension. Lily had begun questioning the family narrative about me, especially as she noticed how different she was from Thomas. The most shocking revelation came 2 months into our correspondence. A former colleague from Wellington Partners contacted me out of the blue to apologize. Marcus had been fired from his latest position for fabricating evidence against a competitor. During the investigation, he had drunkenly confessed to several past schemes, including the one that destroyed my life 16 years earlier. Word got back to Jessica through industry connections, forcing her to confront the terrible truth. She had thrown away our marriage and subjected our daughter to a toxic home environment based on a vindictive lie. According to Lily, Jessica had fallen into a deep depression upon learning the truth. My parents and Jessica's family made awkward overtures about reconciliation, but their messages lacked true accountability. They spoke of misunderstandings and moving forward without acknowledging the violent assault or the years of alienation from my child. My feelings were complicated, a mess of old anger, lingering hurt, and exhausted indifference. Lily, however, was determined to establish a relationship with me. Against her mother's wishes, she arranged to visit Sarah and me in Denver during her spring break. Watching my 16-year-old daughter walk through the airport terminal toward me, I felt 16 years of grief and love collide. Our first hug lasted minutes, both of us crying without shame. The week she spent with us was precious beyond words. We talked about everything: her life, growing up, my journey, rebuilding from nothing, our shared interest in technology. Sarah and Lily formed an immediate bond, united by their analytical minds and dry humor. When Jessica finally called to apologize, her voice small and broken, I found I could speak to her without the burning rage that had once consumed me. "I forgive you," I said, "not for you, but for myself and for Lily. But I will never forget what you all did." Thomas predictably was jealous of my reconnection with Lily. He had raised her as his own, yet clearly felt threatened by our natural rapport. He sent angry texts accusing me of trying to steal his family, revealing the insecurity that had likely driven his betrayal years ago. With Lily's blessing, I established clear boundaries with my former family. I would have a relationship with my daughter on my terms, but I had no interest in family reunions or pretending the assault and abandonment never happened. My parents could meet me for limited public visits if they wished to know their granddaughter's father again, but our relationship would never be what it once was. The most beautiful outcome was watching Lily flourish, once unburdened from family secrets. Her grades improved, and she began interning remotely for our company, showing remarkable aptitude for software development. We made plans for her to attend college in Colorado, where she could maintain connections with both families, but build her own independent life. Looking back on the 16-year journey from complete destruction to reconciliation, I am struck by how resilience truly works. It is not about pretending the pain never happened or about dramatic revenge. It is about building something new from the ashes, one small decision at a time. Truth has a way of emerging, no matter how deeply it is buried. The false accusations that once seemed so convincing eventually crumbled under their own weight. The family that assaulted and disowned me ultimately lost more than I did, living with a lie that poisoned their relationships from within. The family I have now with Sarah and our reconnection with Lily is stronger precisely because it was chosen and built with intention, not simply inherited by blood. We created it from nothing, tested by fire, and more precious for having almost been lost. Have you ever been falsely accused or betrayed by those you trusted most? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story of resilience resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that they can rebuild after betrayal. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes your chosen family becomes more valuable than those you are born into.